At the hospital, my daughter told the nurse, "Don't waste oxygen on him. He's not worth it." She thought I was too weak to hear her words. But when the bill arrived and my name wasn't there, she started screaming. Her smile disappeared. The first thing I heard was not the beeping. It was her voice, low and sharp, a whisper that cut cleaner than any machine sound in that room. "Don't waste oxygen on him," she told the nurse. "He's not worth it." If you're reading this, tell me where you are watching from, because what I'm about to say feels impossible, like a bad story told by a stranger. But it happened to me, here, under a white ceiling, with a hairline crack that looked like a river on a map. I lay very still. The tube hummed. The monitor clicked. I kept my eyes almost closed, that thin slit of sight you have when you pretend to sleep. I could see the soft blue of the curtain, the reflection of her hair in the metal V pole, the edge of her phone lifted toward her mouth. I heard every word, and I decided in that moment to be weaker than I was, to be quiet, to listen. The nurse, young, careful, the kind of person who would warm a stethoscope before touching skin, shifted her weight. "Ma'am," she said, gentle, "please lower your voice." My daughter breathed out through her nose, annoyed. "You don't understand," she said. "He brought this on himself." I let the breath run out of me in a slow, controlled stream. I had learned the art of flat calm in another life, in meetings where men shouted and I smiled, in nights when a child burned with fever and I whispered, "It's going to be all right," while water boiled for tea. Calm can be stronger than any shout. So I held that calm now, as if it were the last blanket in a cold room. I didn't move. I listened. "His saturation is good," the nurse said. "He's stable." My daughter's shoulder lifted and dropped, a small, impatient shrug. "Then keep it minimal," she muttered. "He doesn't need the good stuff." The words were cheap coins, tossed without care. They landed on my chest with the heavy clink of betrayal. I looked at the nurse's hands, clean nails, a tiny scar near her thumb, and then at my daughter's rings. She liked big stones that caught the light and threw it back like laughter. I remembered when those hands were tiny and sticky with mango juice. I remembered how she used to tuck her fingers into my pocket when we crossed the street, trusting that my legs knew the way. A long time ago, she looked at me as if I was the map and the river and the shore. Now she looked at me like a bill someone else should pay. Before I tell you what came next, let me say this. I am not a man who loves drama. My voice does not rise easily. When trouble comes, I don't chase it with noise. I watch, I measure, I count the small things, the faces, the angles, the door half open, the pause in a sentence. So, when my daughter said those words, I did not fight the tape across my hand or tear at the cannula in my nose. I went still and stepped backward inside myself, like a man stepping into a quiet room and closing the door behind him. From there, I looked through a window at the life I had lived, and I found the beginning. She was pink and loud when she came into my arms, a bundle of heat and hunger that moved my whole world by crying. I brought her home wrapped in a yellow blanket her mother had chosen, and my wife laughed when the baby sneezed, a tiny sound like a mouse. "She'll boss you around," my wife said, eyes shining. "You'll love it." I did. I loved the bossy baby and the way she demanded the entire sun from me and accepted a warm bottle as a close second. Nights were soft back then. The house was small and full of echoes, but our whispers fit into it like birds into a nest. We ate on the floor sometimes when the table wobbled, and my wife put a shawl around her shoulders when the window refused to keep the wind out. We had little, but the things we had were always in reach. 2 mugs, 1 pan, a good mop, a kettle that sang when it boiled. In that house, my daughter took her first steps between the sofa and my knees. She fell into me with a laugh that woke every cell I had. I was the one who learned her fever face, the glassy stare, and that small line between her eyebrows that meant, "Hold me now." I was the one who rocked her at 2 in the morning, while my wife slept sitting up beside us, head tilted, mouth open, dreaming of places we said we would take our girl one day. Money was thin, always thin, like a sheet you pull over 2 people and hope it's enough. I took extra shifts. I learned how to fix a leaking tap and a broken fuse because calling someone was a luxury. I would come home late and step carefully over school shoes in the hallway and find a half-done drawing on the table. A house, always a house, with a triangle roof and smoke like cotton from the chimney. She always drew 3 people, Later, she added a cat we never owned and a tree with apples that grew in nice even lines. She said trees liked order. I said so, do fathers who want to find their keys in the morning. When she was 5, she climbed onto my shoulders at the fair and screamed with delight when the Ferris wheel lifted us above the streetlights. The city smelled of popcorn and rain. "Don't let go," she said into my hair, though there was no danger of that. I had an iron grip then. My wife took a picture, our only camera, a small square thing with a badge of silver, and the flash froze us in a bright second. Sometimes I still see that second. It lives in my wallet, the edges fuzzy, the smile fixed to my face like a promise I had no plan to break. The promises were not grand in our home. They were small. I will be there at your school play. I will fix your bike chain. I will taste your terrible pancakes and say, with a straight face, that they are the best in the world. I kept those promises the way a mason lays bricks, steady and straight, one on the other until a wall stands. My wife, bright as morning, kept her own kind of time. She stitched with neat hands. She hummed as she chopped onions. She loved a certain soap that smelled like jasmine and old books. When she fell ill, it was like watching our house learn a new sound, the hush of worry that follows you from room to room. Hospitals became familiar, their shine and their drawers, that plastic smell that sticks to your clothes and your tongue. My daughter held her mother's hand and asked if we could pause the sky until she felt better. We told her it would be all right. We did not know how not to say it. On the last good day, my wife pulled me close and said, "Keep our girl kind." I said yes. I would have promised anything. I meant it. I still do. I failed maybe. Or maybe kindness is a river that can look calm and still run cold. After her mother left the world, my daughter grew quiet in a new way. She kept her room very ordered for a year, as if the bed corners could keep the rest of life square. Then she began to move fast, like a bird darting between trees. There were friends I didn't know, and perfumes that made me sneeze, and late nights that turned into later mornings. I stood in doorways and asked questions gently. She answered with words that looked right but felt wrong, like fruit that shines but has no taste. I didn't scold much. I tried to hold the line with respect, with talks after dinner, with walks around the block where we looked at houses and guessed who lived inside by the curtains they chose. She laughed at my guesses, but the laugh sometimes landed a foot short of the old warmth. When she finished school, she hugged me tightly in front of everyone and whispered, "We did it. We did. We always did things together." That was the story I lived in. Back in this white room, she turned away from the nurse and touched the bed rail with a fingernail. Click, click, a small sound, sharp as a pin. "You heard me?" the nurse asked. "He's stable. You can't instruct me to let a patient suffer." My daughter pushed a lock of hair behind her ear, the gesture so familiar it hurt me physically. "I'm telling you my father wouldn't want money wasted," she said. "He's always been practical." Practical. I wanted to laugh. Practical was learning to cook 3 ways with 1 pot. Practical was mending socks with reading glasses slipping down my nose. Practical was selling my old watch to pay a tuition installment and then telling her I preferred the lightness on my wrist. Did I teach her that word so well she could turn it against me? Or did she learn a new meaning somewhere I couldn't see? "Sir," the nurse said, "can you hear me?" I let my lashes tremble. Just that, a small wave on a quiet lake. She leaned closer. "Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." I did once, steady. The nurse's face softened. She put a hand on my shoulder. My daughter rolled her eyes. "He always performs when he's not the center of attention," she muttered, a joke meant to be cruel and clever at once. It wasn't true. If I had an audience, it was a little girl who wanted to see me do magic with coins and oranges. If I performed, it was to keep a tiny world running on time. The only stage I ever wanted was a kitchen with the light on and the sound of homework pencils scratching at the table. I stared at the ceiling crack again, tracing the river, and somewhere in the distance a machine hissed like a sleeping cat. The air was cool and thin. I pulled it in and let it go in even measures, as if I were counting stones into a jar. I do my best thinking in silence. I had learned long ago that the person who rushes first often loses the game. My father taught me that with a chessboard on a mat that smelled of dust and cumin. "Watch the hands," he used to say. "Hands tell you what the voice is hiding." So I watched my daughter's hands. When the nurse turned to check the chart, those hands flew to her phone and pulled up an app. I recognized the logo, though I'd never used it. She squinted, typed, frowned. Money has many faces. I could almost see the numbers moving behind her eyes. It hurt me that I knew that look. "Can you step outside with me?" the nurse asked her. "We need to recheck his medications and confirm contact details." My daughter sent the nurse a thin smile and nodded as if she were doing the hospital a small favor. The curtains screeched softly along the rail as they moved. I kept my eyes narrow, my breathing quiet. When the curtain swung back, the room felt bigger for a second, then colder. I lay there and counted the tiles in my mind. I thought of my wife's last good day again, the way she had pressed my palm and said that one word, kind. I thought of the baby in the yellow blanket and the 5-year-old on my shoulders who yelled from the top of the city that she could see our house from up there. I thought of the girl who had brought me a lopsided card on Father's Day, with a cup drawn in purple crayon and the words "World's Best" spelled without the LL. The nurse returned first. She bent to adjust the flow and looked into my eyes in a way that told me she knew I was more awake than I showed. She did not betray me. She only said, "You're doing well, sir." For a second, I felt something like gratitude rest on my chest, warm and heavy. My daughter followed, voice already raised, a low argument winding down. "Fine," she said. "Do what you want." She stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, and stared at the sheet as if the creases offended her. A strand of hair had escaped her neat bun and curled along her cheek. I remembered tucking that same kind of curl behind her ear when she studied for exams and fell asleep face down in her books. I used to think there were a few simple gestures that could fix anything. Tuck a curl, bring a glass of water, peel an orange in one long spiral, and hold it up like a victory ribbon. Life is not simple. People unlearn sweetness. You might ask why I didn't sit up and tell her off, why I didn't crack the calm and pour my anger over the floor until the room smelled of thunder. But here is the truth. Anger has its place, and its place is not a hospital bed. Also, there are lessons that don't land when they are shouted. Some truths travel quietly, like letters sent by hand. I had a letter to deliver, but not yet. Some of you reading this will say you would have thrown the sheet off and said, "Get out." Perhaps you would. Perhaps you would have enjoyed the sound of it. I wanted something else. Not noise, not victory by volume, but the slow, exact line of a consequence that fits the act that called for it. A father can choose that line if he has the right tools. I had spent my life learning which tool to pick up. That day I chose patience. I chose to listen to her until her own voice told me who she had become. The nurse left to fetch a form. My daughter exhaled. "You don't have to pretend," she murmured, not to me, to the room. "Everyone pretends here." She pulled a chair back with a scrape and sat, twisting the strap of her bag between her fingers. The bag was expensive, the leather soft in a way you can feel from across a room. I closed my eyes all the way and let the darkness show me a different picture. Another chair, another room, a night when rain ran down the glass like cold threads. My daughter was 13 and angry about a girl at school. She had slammed a door and then cried into my shirt about being left out. I had made tea and said, "You can't make people love you, but you can be someone worth loving." She had snorted, which at 13 is a kind of yes. I wonder what she hears now when she remembers me. Maybe only the parts that suit her. I opened my eyes again to a thin slice and saw the nurse return with a clipboard, a pen tucked behind her ear. "We'll need the primary contact and the person responsible for decisions if needed," she said. "We also need to confirm the billing details." My daughter leaned forward, quick, like someone catching a bus. "Yes," she said. "I'll handle all that." The nurse nodded and glanced at me. I kept my face quiet, my breath even. If this were a story I was telling only to myself, maybe I would end this moment here, keep us forever in this white room, with the rustle of paper and the hush after hard words. But stories don't stop when you ask them to. They flow like the crack in the ceiling. They find a way to reach the wall. I thought of the box in my study with the brass latch that stuck if you pushed it the wrong way. Inside, on a certain day when the light was good, I had sorted papers with the neatness of a man setting tools on a bench. I had written my name where it needed to be and erased it where it no longer belonged. I had done what men do when they love their family and trust time less than they used to. I did not move my mouth. I did not smile. But a small, colder part of me felt the weight of those papers like stones in a pocket. Not today, I told myself. Don't reach for them. Let her talk. Let the room listen. Let the air bear witness. So I let section 1 of my own heart be written in silence. The words she chose, the bed she stood by, the nurse who measured compassion in careful doses, and the father who lay very still under a sky of white paint, counting breaths and memories. If you've stayed with me this far, tell me where you are from, tell me the city, the street, the room where you read this. Because what came next will ask you to stand somewhere with me. It will ask you to look at a face you once loved and see what lines time has carved there. It will ask you to hear a voice that grew up in your house and judge whether it knows your name. I am not ready yet to speak, but I am ready to remember, and I am ready to listen until even the quiet things confess themselves. The clipboard lay like a small square verdict at the foot of my bed. The nurse waited, pen poised, and my daughter leaned in as if she were about to buy something she had already decided to return. I'm the primary, she said, quick, practiced. Put my number there. If there are choices to make, call me. The nurse nodded, but didn't write right away. Do you have his medical proxy documents? She asked. My daughter's mouth tightened. I'll bring them, she said. The nurse lifted her eyes, steady. We need them on file. My daughter nodded again, a stiff little bow that meant, you're in my way. Then, as if the air itself had irritated her, she turned slightly away and made a call. Yes, she said into the phone, voice low, clipped. It's still going. No, not critical. They're milking it. I told them to keep it. Minimal. The word came back like a cold spoon against a tooth. Minimal. I lay very still and watched the ceiling crack travel, and I felt something inside me travel with it. Slow, exact, heading somewhere I could not change. She started to talk numbers. Listen, the account can't go below that threshold, she told whoever it was. I need the transfer today, not Friday. And cancel the private room upgrade. He doesn't need that. Shared ward is fine. No, the nurses can handle him. The nurse across from her blinked at the floor and then at me, as if to say she knew I heard. He won't even notice, my daughter added, softer, not because she cared, but because the nurse was there. Another voice bled out of the phone, tinny. No, my daughter snapped. Do not touch the investment side. I'll get the keys later. She hung up and pressed her lips together in a thin smile that had no joy in it at all. This is how betrayal escalates, not with a single shout, but with small, practiced cuts. She readjusted the strap of her bag, then reached for the drawer by my bed. Where are his things? She asked the nurse, as if I were luggage. The nurse hesitated. Valuables are logged and kept by security, she said. We returned only essentials. My daughter's eyes passed over the plastic water cup, the clock, the folded extra gown. I'll need his keys, she said, and his phone, and any cards. The nurse had that trained politeness that can lift a wall without making a sound. We can release items to the patient or to the person on record, she said. We'll confirm that later. My daughter gave a little laugh with no music. He's barely here, she said, waving a hand at me. I'll confirm it for you. She meant, I will decide who he is. The nurse finished her notes and left, promising labs and forms. The room thinned again. My daughter stood and smoothed the sheet, not to comfort me, but as if the crease offended her sense of control. You should have told me before you landed here, she said, as if this were a party I had planned badly. I had a dinner. I canceled important things. She looked at me, and there was a quick check in her eyes to see if I had heard the words, important things. I let my eyes close halfway. Of course, she said then, different tone, the one she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. You couldn't, obviously. You don't plan these things. I watched the curve of her cheekbone, the way the light drew a soft line there. It is a strange shock to see a face you love and find there the same exact line you once kissed to console tears, now holding a cool expression that does not belong to your child. She sat again and scrolled. The blue of her phone lit her throat. She wrote something with fast thumbs and stopped, thinking. I thought of the notes I used to leave in her lunchbox when she was small. You are brave, I would write. You can do hard things. In those days, words were seeds. You put them into a child's pocket and hoped they would sprout at the right time. Now, I watched a different kind of word sprout in real time. Can we move him? She typed, lips moving as she wrote. Public hospital. He's stable. She deleted public, replaced it with the name of an older facility, the one everyone says is good enough, if you don't mind waiting for everything. She insists on staying, she typed, and then, catching herself, changed insists to would prefer, because even lies need to sit straight on the page to look respectable. She made another call. Yes, Ma, she said, and I understood then it was her mother-in-law. He's being difficult. You know how he is? Yes, very dramatic. No, he's not dying. They're exaggerating. Her laugh was a paper cut. Sure, I told them, but why should we throw good money? If the doctor says oxygen, fine, but I told them not to overdo it. He's always been proud. He wouldn't want that. She paused, listening. Yes, I'll handle the house. The keys, I'll pick them up. The study, yes, the papers. Don't worry. A long hum came through the speaker, a voice advising, scolding, or approving. I could not tell. My daughter's responses were the sounds of a person aligning her plan to someone else's lines. I'll keep you posted, she said, and ended the call with a two-finger tap to her bag, a habit she had when ticking off a task. Escalation is also in the small orders that pretend to be care. She stood, pulled the curtain back a bit to let in more light, and said, loud enough for the passing nurse to hear, he prefers less fuss. Don't crowd him with too many visits. The nurse, to her credit, nodded without accepting the instruction. We'll do what the doctor orders, she said. My daughter smiled a fixed, hard smile. Yes, of course, she said, and then to me, voice lowered. Don't make this harder, okay? It was the way a manager speaks to an employee on the edge of losing a job. I had spoken that way once, long ago, when a young man came late 3 days in a row and smelled of beer at 10 a.m. I had never imagined my daughter using that tone on me. I kept my eyes almost shut and saved every word like evidence. Water, she said, and then, without waiting, held the cup to my lips. The cup touched my mouth like a metal coin. I sipped. She pulled it away too fast. Enough. She wiped the rim with a tissue, not for me, for the idea of cleanliness. You like things simple, don't you? She said, half smile. No nonsense. Let's keep it that way. In the hall, a trolley squeaked. Someone laughed. Someone cried a small animal cry in the next room. The hospital is a busy river and, at the same time, an island. You are surrounded and alone. She put the cup down and looked at the clock. They're slow, she muttered. Why don't they bring the bill up front? Then they take you seriously. This is where the inner voice wakes up. The voice that saved me in the worst meetings and the longest nights. I let it speak to me now in a slow, even whisper only I could hear. Not today, it said. Not noise. Watch. The river teaches you more than the shore. Look at her hands. Watch the things she chooses when no one is grading her for kindness. My breath came smooth in rows. I turned my head a fraction, enough to see the doorway. A junior doctor passed. The nurse returned, and with her came a file and a soft apology for the delay. We need to ask a few more standard questions, she said to my daughter. Any allergies we don't have on record? Any change in next of kin since last visit? There, the smallest shift in my daughter's stance. No allergies, she said. Next of kin, me. She said it like a title. The nurse wrote then, careful as a painter. There was a time when I would have interrupted, added details, smoothed edges. A father makes things easier for his child. He brings ladders, lowers ceilings, shortens distances. But there is a later time when the ladders must stay where they are. If the child has grown into someone who kicks ladders away, maybe the sky she's reaching for is not one you can survive in. I breathed and looked at the window. The afternoon had deepened. The city beyond the glass had the heavy light that makes even new buildings look old. A small cloud drifted, shaped like a boat. I remembered a boat I had folded for her out of newspaper one afternoon, when rain had made the balcony into a shallow pond. We floated the boat until it sank, and she cried as if it had been a real ship. I had laughed and folded 10 more. That's the trick, I had told her. You don't cry for the first thing that sinks. You build another. She had sniffed and nodded, brave. I wonder which boats she learned to fold when I wasn't looking. The nurse's questions moved on. Medicines, pain, sleep. My daughter answered when it suited her and waved a hand when it did not. He's always fine, she said. He never complains. The nurse smiled, a small, real thing. He's a quiet one, she said. Yes, my daughter said, and the word sounded almost like a kindness until she added, he should keep it that way. She started to sign where the nurse pointed. Her signature had grown larger since the last time I saw it. Wide loops, a line that wanted space. Some people earn the space around their names. Others take it with a pen. When the nurse left again, my daughter leaned closer to me, as if we were sharing a secret. "You know what I'm doing," she whispered. "I'm keeping things efficient." I looked at her through my lashes and wondered if she remembered the day I taught her the word efficient. She had a school project and too many glitter bottles, and I had said, "Make a plan before you pour." She had laughed and poured anyway, and we both spent an hour sweeping tiny stars from the floor while the cat chased the broom. "Life is not an arts and crafts table," she said now, smirking, speaking to a father who once believed that time could be organized by love and lists. "You let money sleep, I wake it up." There was a part of me that wanted to sit up then, to look her in the eye, to ask where my girl had gone. But another part, the older, colder part that had built a life from a low starting point and kept it standing through storms, told me to wait. There is a season for questions that are really declarations. There is also a season for silence that plants a flag on a hill without anyone seeing. The quieter season was now. I thought of the brass-latched box again, of forms I had signed in rooms that smelled of toner and coffee, of conversations with a man whose job it is to look at you without emotion and ask, "Are you sure?" I had been sure. I had been a rock in that chair, a man rehearsing a quiet future, even while his hands shook under the table. A father learns to be two people when needed, the one who breaks and the one who signs his name without showing the break. My daughter paced. "I'll need to talk to the doctor," she said to herself. "No more scans unless necessary. Those add up." She took her phone again and tapped. "Also the housekeeper," she said into another call now, voice low. "Pack the study, put the files in a box, label it. No, don't read anything, just seal it. Keep the watches aside." She listened, nodded, rolled her eyes. "Yes, I know which ones. The old ones, he won't need them." The words were ice cubes dropped one by one into a glass. They hit, they melted, they made the whole drink colder. She ended the call and turned back to me. "I'm going to step out," she said. "Don't do anything silly." She meant, "Do not surprise me by being who you are." She left the room with a rush of air. The curtain trembled. The hallway swallowed her footsteps. The nurse came back a minute later, checked my line, her hand warm on my wrist. "You're doing well," she said again, and this time there was a tiny emphasis that said, "I see you." I turned my head just enough to meet her eyes. "Water," I whispered, though I did not need it. She brought it anyway, and I drank, slow, grateful for the excuse to show I could move when I chose. "Your daughter is efficient," she said, choosing the word with the care of someone picking a glass up by the stem. "She is," I whispered back, and let the two words sit there between us like a heavy coin on a table. The nurse lowered her voice. "If you need anything specific," she said, "tell me. Sometimes sometimes they manage things their own way." It was a kindness in disguise, a lifeline without rope. I nodded just once. "Thank you," I said, the sound small but clear. She gave me the look good nurses give, focused, quick, a promise without drama, and left. I lay back and counted my breaths again. 1, 2, 3. The way I had counted kicks when my wife carried our girl and laughed, "She's a dancer," while our baby thumped a tiny foot against the inside of the world. The doorframe caught a shadow. My daughter was back, this time with a man in a suit who moved fast and smiled slow. "He's the billing officer," she announced, as if she had hired him. The man nodded at me, then at the chart. "We'll finalize soon," he said, professional, non-committal. My daughter leaned toward him. "I told them to send it up," she said. "Put it in my father's name for now. We'll sort details later." The man opened his mouth, closed it, checked the file again. "We'll confirm," he said, and left a thin trail of cologne in his wake. My daughter turned back to me and lifted her chin. "You see," she said, "I'm on top of it." She looked almost pleased, as if she had solved a puzzle in front of a classroom. I did. Not move. I did not hand her the rope she could use to pull me into an argument that would make the room small and cheap. I stayed where I was on my island, watching the river. Inside, the voice that knows how to measure a moment spoke again. "Not yet," it said. "Let the pieces fall to the positions they choose. Let the board show itself. Your move will be won. Clean." I let the words pass through me. I thought of my wife's last request, how it had not been about money or walls or even about happiness. "Keep our girl kind," she had said. "There are promises that, when broken by someone else, break you in the place you kept the promise." I accepted that break and set it down beside me like a folded jacket. You carry some breaks. You don't fix them. You keep them to remember what steel feels like when it bends. My daughter checked the time again. "They'll send the bill," she said. "I'm going downstairs to push them. They don't move unless you press." She stood, took a step, and paused to look at me as if she were trying to decide whether I was a wall or a mirror. "Don't make a scene," she said. "Please." The please was a leaf stuck on a stone after rain, there for show, not attached to anything living. She left. The room filled with the quiet hum of machines and the soft tap of a shoe down the hall. I stared at the window until the boat cloud drifted off the frame and a plain blue piece of sky took its place. I closed my eyes. I let the calm reach deeper into the part of me that organizes and files and counts the lives of things. The man I used to be at work sat up inside me and straightened his tie. The father put his hands flat on the desk. The husband took the shawl from the back of the chair and put it over his wife's shoulders in memory. All those men agreed on the next action. Wait and be ready. There is a kind of power in not moving. It makes other people show their shape. It lets sound find you. It keeps your heart from wasting itself on doors that will not open from the inside, no matter how hard you pound. The nurse came one last time, before the light turned the wall a pale honey color. "They're preparing a statement," she said. "Someone will bring it." I nodded. "And your daughter asked for copies," she added carefully. "We'll provide what's appropriate." I nodded again and watched the curtain edge tremble with the breeze from the vent. In the small pause, I heard another child crying 3 rooms away, a high keening sound that took me back 20 years in a blink. "Hush," I heard myself whisper without meaning to, and the nurse glanced at me and gave a tiny smile and left. I pressed my palm flat on the sheet and felt the heat of my own hand and thought, whatever comes through that door next, I will meet it with the same face I used when my girl had a nightmare and I did not turn on all the lights. I sat in the dark and told the dark to sit down too. The footsteps came. 2 sets. My daughter's quick click, the billing officer's slower, professional tread. The door opened, paper in a manila folder, a pen, a soft clearing of a throat. "We have the preliminary statement," he said. My daughter's eyes gleamed with a strange excitement, the way some people smile at the start of a race. She reached for the folder before it reached me. "We'll handle this," she said. The man held it back, polite firmness. "We'll review with the patient," he said, words like a line painted on the floor. My daughter's face did a small thing then, an expression I had seen when she was 3, and the biscuit tin was moved out of reach. For a second, her mouth betrayed her. She recovered fast. "Fine," she said, and moved to stand at the end of the bed, arms crossed, as if judging a play that bored her. I looked at the folder, and then at the man, and then at my daughter. The moment stretched like warm toffee, pulling thinner, shining. "Go ahead," my daughter said, impatient. "Let's not waste time." I let my eyes open all the way. I let my breathing settle in a steady, deliberate rhythm. I moved my fingers on the sheet, slow, sure. This is what control looks like. Not speed, not noise, but a measured set of choices that line up like stones across a river. I was almost ready to put my foot on the first stone, not to jump, to step. One, then the next, and then the next. The billing officer cleared his throat the way people do when they're about to say something that will rearrange a room. He set the folder on the tray table, opened it with 2 fingers, and slid a single sheet to the top. The paper was cream, the print dark, the kind of page that thinks it's just paper until it starts a fire. "This is the preliminary statement," he said, voice mild. "Room charges, monitoring, oxygen, tests ordered, the initial deposit, and the responsible party." My daughter leaned forward, already bored with the parts that didn't involve power. "Fine," she said. "Put it in his name. He'll cover the basics. We'll sort the rest." The man glanced at the page again, then at me, then at her. "It isn't in his name," he said, careful, neutral. "It's in yours." For a second, the air didn't move. Then she laughed, a short, wrong note. "No," she said, reaching for the sheet. "You've made a mistake." The officer kept his finger on the corner. We verified from the last admission record on file, he said. Responsible party, daughter. That was digitally signed 2 months ago during a checkup in outpatient. She blinked fast, like a person adjusting to sudden light. I never, she started, then stopped because memory is petty and true. She had come with me for a scan, impatient even that day, and signed on a glass slab without looking. I remembered the way her nail had tapped the screen while I adjusted my sleeve. We can change it, she said now, pushing forward. Just put his name. He's the patient. The officer's smile did not move. We would need the patient's consent while lucid or a valid medical proxy, he said. We don't have a proxy on file. The nurse's eyes flicked to mine and away. My daughter's shoulders tightened under her blouse. You can see he's not in a condition to debate paperwork, she said, voice sharpening. Be practical. The word fell again, like a coin hitting the same spot on a table. The officer folded his hands. Our policy is very practical, he said. It protects patients and families. He tapped the line on the page with a neat nail. My daughter followed his finger and then saw it, her own name, full and heavy, printed beside responsible party. It sat there like a mirror that did not flatter. Color rose along her neck. She grabbed the pen. Fine, she said tightly. Give me where to sign to change it. The officer did not hand the pen. Ma'am, you already signed, he said. This is a confirmation of what is already recorded. A change requires the patient's consent or the legal proxy. She shot a look at the nurse, then at me, then back to the paper, as if the letters might behave differently if she stared hard enough. He's always made his own decisions, she said, which was true and not true at once. I had made my own decisions, yes, but never without first counting the people I loved into the total. She wanted the kind of decision that erases the person it's about. The room thinned around the edges, the way a picture blurs when you step too close. I let my breath move in its slow lane. I watched the officer's thumb press the page, the small white half moon, his nail made in the paper. The initial deposit is due now, he continued, voice smooth, and will bill daily for oxygen and monitoring. Any procedures will be estimated and pre-cleared. He said the numbers. They rang in the room like small bells, each one clean, undeniable. My daughter went very still. Then she smiled. It was not a good smile. Send it to him, she said, stabbing a finger toward me without looking. He can cover it. He has funds. I'll reimburse later. The officer opened his hands as if to show they were empty. We cannot change the responsible party without the required documents, he repeated. A silence followed that I recognized from the days my boss told a client something the client did not want to hear. It is a silence made of two things: pride and the sound of a door that will not open. Her eyes flashed. Are you seriously telling me, she said, each word clipped, that you expect me to carry this because I placed a fast signature on a screen months ago? The officer did not flinch. I am telling you what the record already shows, he said. You can bring the proxy, or your father can confirm in writing if he feels comfortable. He looked at me then, inviting, gentle. I did not move. The quiet gathered around my tongue and asked to be used like a blade. Not yet, I told it. Let her walk her path. She snatched the paper then, ignoring the officer's hand, and scanned the lines with a quick, greedy anger. When she reached the total, her mouth opened before the sound did, as if the price had reached into her and pulled the noise out. What? She said, half breath, then louder. What is this? Are you mad? The officer waited. That is the standard rate for the level of care, he explained. If the doctor downgrades, the cost drops accordingly. Right now, oxygen and monitoring are prescribed. She turned to the nurse. He doesn't need the full oxygen, she said. You can see he's breathing. Reduce it. The nurse's face didn't change. We follow the doctor, she said. He needs it. My daughter took a step back, then forward again, a pacing cat with no plan for the door. No, she said. No, listen. Put it in his name. She slapped the paper with the back of her hand. He's the one in the bed. I have responsibilities. I'm in the middle of a move. I have payments scheduled. I shouldn't. This is ridiculous. The officer slid the paper back into the folder, as if hiding it might lower the heat. I'll give you time, he said. The cashier is on the ground floor when you're ready. He gave me a small nod, respect, perhaps, or pity, and left. The door clicked. The nurse adjusted the line and left too, soft as a shadow. And then my daughter screamed. It wasn't loud enough to shake the building, but it broke something in the room that feels the weather. "Why is my name there?" she cried, as if the paper were a person who had stabbed her back. "Why is it me?" Her hand shook. The rings glinted like hard little eyes. "You planned this," she said, turning her head to me with a fury so hot it looked like light. "You did this to me." I looked at her, finally, fully, letting her see the open eyes she had been avoiding. My voice came out flat, even. "No," I said, just that. "Number?" She stepped closer until I could see the small freckle at the edge of her eyebrow, the mark I used to kiss before school. "Then tell them to change it," she demanded. "Now. Say it's you." I blinked slowly. "Bring the proxy you promised," I said. The words were simple. They were pebbles placed neatly on a shelf. She gaped, thrown by the quiet. "Don't be clever," she hissed. "You won't win." There it was, the real thing, the real game named aloud. Win. As if this were a match and not a man's lungs learning the room again. "This isn't a game," I said, same tone, same calm. "This is a bill." She made a sound like a laugh breaking in half. "You think you're wise," she said, "but you are old and slow, and the world is faster than you." She pointed at the folder on the tray. "It's faster than this paper, faster than your rules." She spun toward the door and yanked it open. The hallway turned its face to her. A patient on a walker, an orderly pushing a metal stand, a child holding a cup with both hands. "You," she called to the officer down the corridor, voice sharp, and he turned with the reflex of a man who has been called many names by people who owe him. "Get back here," she snapped. He did not immediately. He came in measured steps that said the bill would not chase anyone. "Ma'am," he said, "we don't raise our voices on this floor." "Then change the name," she said, "or remove the oxygen." The nurse reappeared like a curtain in a breeze, placing herself between my daughter and the machines, with a stillness that understood storms. "We don't barter with breath," she said softly. The sentence sat in the air like a bowl of clear water. My daughter's eyes filled, not with tears, but with a kind of furious moisture that makes the surface shine without softening it. "You don't understand," she said to both of them, and neither of them. "He always made me carry things that weren't mine." She turned to me. "You taught me to be efficient," she said, "to be strong, to make choices with numbers in mind." I could have told her the second half of that sentence I had always said in my head, and too rarely out loud, and keep the people in front of you whole, but explanations are not for moments when a person is building a wall with their own mouth. She called her husband then. "They're trying to put it on me," she said without hello. "Yes, that hospital, the bill, my name." A tinny male voice rose, too far to hear, close enough to sting. "No," she said, "I can't move him without the doctor. No, I'm not paying this today. They can wait. Tell Ma to call that cousin on the board." She listened, lips moving in a silent argument, and then, Fine, come. Bring the file, the one with the house stuff. I want it now." She ended the call with a flat thumb, like pressing down on a thought. The officer waited. "Shall I leave the estimate with you?" he asked, all politeness again. A man who knows that paper can sit quietly and do its work long after voices tire. "Leave it," I said before she could speak, my voice not louder, only firmer, a line drawn with a ruler. He looked at me, surprised, and placed the sheet by my hand. My daughter's head snapped toward me. "You don't decide," she said. I didn't answer. I reached and slid the paper an inch closer, slow and steady, and studied the numbers as if they were birds on a wire. There is a way to read a bill that has nothing to do with money. You look for the story it tells about a person's care. Oxygen at this level, checks at that hour, the cost of a machine that hums so your chest remembers a rhythm. Each line is a sentence about breath. "Sir," the officer said after a pause, "we'll check in again." He left without, waiting for permission. The nurse checked my line, her touch a small, practical kindness. "Everything is stable," she said, and this time she said it to me only, not to the air, not to the idea of family. When the door clicked shut again, my daughter rounded on me with the quickness of a person who has never had to carry silence for more than a minute. "You will tell them to change it," she said. "You will sign." She tapped the pen against the tray. "You will not make me the fool here." I looked at her in the way I used to look at the sky when the power went out, measuring light by habit. Do you remember the fair? I asked, my voice even. Not because I wanted the memory, but because I wanted to see what words did to her face now. Ferris wheel, I said. Popcorn, you on my shoulders, shouting you could see our house. She blinked, thrown by the turn. What does that have to do with this? She snapped. I let the smallest smile touch my mouth. It was not a nice smile. Everything, I said. The word fell quietly and went on, falling into a place in the room that would only be found later. She paced again, heel-toe, heel-toe, the rhythm of a person who will either run or stay and make smoke. You can't trap me like this, she muttered. I have commitments. The transfer is stuck until Friday. They'll penalize me if I move money. I shouldn't have to. She stopped, caught by a thought. You have accounts, she said, brightening. We'll use those. She took her phone, tapped, frowned. Where is the joint? The one you promised we'd keep simple? She tapped more, the frown deepening like a line of weather on a map. Why is the balance? Why is it 0? She looked up, eyes narrowing. What did you do? I said nothing. The quiet opened in front of us like a trap door she had not seen. She prowled around it, talking to fill the gap. Listen, she said, and for the first time all day the word sounded like a plea. I'll move you to the other ward. It's better for both of us. We'll say you asked. I'll get the doctor to agree. Then the costs. She made a downward motion with her hand, as if lowering a blind. You know I'm right. I looked at the window instead of her. Out there, a bird landed on the sill and looked in as if it had a right to. It cocked its head, decided we were not its kind, and flew away. I admired its speed. A knock, not the officer. A different man, in a different suit, with a badge that had more shine. He smiled at my daughter the way people smile when they are about to say yes to someone who expects it. Ma'am, he said, I'm from administration. We can help arrange a transfer if that's what you prefer. My daughter brightened, relief flooding her like a light turned on. Finally, she said, Yes, move him, today. The man nodded, flipped a small tablet, and then hesitated. We'll need the responsible party's request, he said. His eyes dropped to the form. That's you. The light flickered. Fine, she said. She took the stylus. Where do I sign? He pointed. She wrote, broad loops. Then he pointed again. And here, he said. She signed again and handed the tablet back as if it had offended her. Thank you, he said. We'll process the request. There's a transfer fee and a new deposit at the receiving facility. She stared. What fee? He told her. It was not small. No, she said. Number waive it. He smiled that apology you can't cash. We can't. She breathed in, fast, the way a person does before jumping into cold water. I'll think, she said, and he bowed himself out, because the room had decided it was done with him. When the door closed, my daughter's mouth hardened into a line I recognized from mirrors on mornings I had to go to work in shoes that pinched. You forced me, she said. You know that. I've done nothing, I said. You signed, twice. She flinched, the truth landing like a soft slap. You're enjoying this, she said. You like to watch me struggle. I turned my face to her and let her see everything and nothing at once. I am watching, I said. That is true. The pen stilled in her hand. Say you'll pay, she whispered, not because she thought I wouldn't, but because she wanted the play to end with her as director. Say it so they hear you. I let the seconds walk by in a row, one behind the other, until the urge to fill them passed. Breathe, I said finally. That's what the machine is for. Breathe. Then bring what you promised. Her phone buzzed. Husband again. She picked up. Bring the proxy, she barked before he could speak. And the house file, and the keys, and the card. She listened, frowned, listened more. Her voice dropped. What do you mean the key doesn't work? A pause. What do you mean the study lock changed? Another pause, longer, and the color that had returned to her face began to slide away. No, she said. No, he wouldn't. That's impossible. Her eyes flicked to me, wide for the first time today, not with care, but with the shock of a map turning to water under her feet. She ended the call without a word and stared at me as if I had grown taller in the bed. I closed my eyes, not to hide from her, but to remind myself of the ceiling crack river I had been following since morning. Rivers don't shout when they change course. They just go. She stood very still, and I could feel her thinking hard, moving pieces I could not see on a board I knew too well. "I'll be back," she said at last, voice low, tight. "Don't sign anything. Don't look at anything." She meant, "Stay the statue you've been while I find a new door." She swept up her bag, checked her face in the black glass of the TV, as if a story might be written there with better lines, and left the room with a sharp wash of perfume and air that made the curtain lift and fall. The quiet returned, generous, level. The nurse came, checked, adjusted, wrote a line. "Are you comfortable?" she asked. "Yes," I said, and meant it in a strange way. Comfort is not always soft pillows and warm hands. Sometimes it is the knowledge that a truth is finally sitting in the room on its own chair, not hiding in the curtains anymore. I let the machine breathe with me. I looked at the bill beside my hand and slid it into the folder with the slow certainty of a man closing a drawer he has already organized. Somewhere down the hall, a new baby cried, thin and fierce, and someone laughed in that scared, joyful way people laugh when life arrives. I placed my palm flat on the sheet and felt the steady rise and fall. Footsteps again, lighter this time, hesitant. A junior doctor peered in, saw I was awake, and nodded. "We'll keep monitoring," he said. "You're doing well?" He wrote something, left. I turned my head enough to see the window, the square of sky that had changed from pale to mild to the clean blue of late afternoon. Shadows climbed the wall like vines. I thought of the box with the brass latch. I thought of signatures in quiet offices. I thought of a shawl that smelled of jasmine and old books, folded neatly on the back of a chair. I thought of a little girl on my shoulders shouting that she could see home. I thought of a woman whispering, "Keep our girl kind." I let all those thoughts sit down in chairs around the bed and face me. I breathed, I waited. I counted the space between two beeps and felt time come back to do what it does when you don't fight it, move forward. I did not hear the elevator doors, only the echo of their decision when my daughter swept back into the room with her husband 2 steps behind, a man wearing a navy suit that looked new and a face that looked borrowed. He carried a leather folder under his arm like a weapon he wasn't trained to use. Behind them came a woman in a pale shawl, his mother, eyes scanning, lips compressed, as if the room had been arranged incorrectly for her arrival. The air changed the way it does before rain. "Show me," my daughter said, not to me, to the situation. Her husband slid the folder onto the tray table with a nervous flourish, the way a man presents something expensive the moment he stops believing it will be enough. "We brought everything," he announced. "Title copies, bank references, the proxy form." Ma spoke to someone. "We'll sort this now." He glanced at me, then away, as if I were a window he refused to look through in case it showed him his own face. The billing officer hovered at the door again, drawn as if by a bell, and the nurse appeared with him, watchful. "We'll need the proxy," the officer said, polite as ever, but with a new alertness that told me he had seen this scene before. Families arriving with folders like fire, extinguishers, convinced paper can put out a blaze they started with a match called greed. My daughter took a fresh pen and poised it above the form like a conductor. "I, as the daughter and primary, appoint myself to act," she began to write, and then stopped because the nurse had lifted a hand. "Ma'am," she said gently, "a proxy is assigned by the patient. He must sign." My daughter's jaw tightened. She turned to me, voice dipped in syrup that did not taste sweet. "Baba," she said, "sign this so I can handle everything for you. It's what you would want. You always trusted me to be efficient." The husband watched my face like a dealer watching a card about to turn. The mother-in-law stood a fraction taller, her eyes moving between the paper and my hands. I let my breath sit where it was, then I moved my hand up from the sheet, slow the way a man lifts a cup in a room where movement costs. My fingers closed around the proxy form. The paper felt cool. I let my eyes travel the lines. They were clean, clear, the kind any person could sign without harm if the person receiving the power knew the meaning of care. I set the paper down without signing. "No," I said, in the voice I used when the world was trying to hurry me into someone else's mistake. My daughter laughed too fast. "Don't play," she said. "You're unwell. You need someone to act for you. It should be me." Her husband took a step forward. "Sir, it's standard," he said. "We'll streamline decisions." The nurse looked at me. A small nod I could have mistaken for a blink. The officer looked at my daughter. The mother-in-law exhaled a soft, satisfied sound that assumed the world would return to its proper order once the polite old man in the bed did what he was told. "No," I said again, flat, the word a level placed on a crooked shelf. "I will not sign that." My daughter's cheeks prettied themselves with a quick heat. "Then sign this," she snapped, slapping the billing confirmation toward me. "Put your name where mine is. It is ridiculous that I—" She caught herself, her eyes flicking to the officer. "That I am in this position while you do nothing." "I am doing something," I said. "I am choosing." The husband laughed, short, with no humor. "Sir, with respect, this is not a chessboard." I turned my head just enough to let him see I had heard him and dismissed the thought in the same motion. "Everything is a board if you draw the lines," I said. "Some pieces think they are queens." My gaze did not leave my daughter's face. "Some pieces mistake the other side for an audience." She tried another angle. "We went to the house," she said. "The study is locked. The key doesn't work. Why?" Her voice cracked like a plate, then came back whole. I let a small, slow smile rise and then fall, like a hand acknowledging a familiar stranger. "Because I changed the lock," I said. No apology, no explanation. Her husband's shoulders jerked. "You can't do that," he said. "We need access." "To what?" I asked. "To the files," he said, almost triumphant. "To the accounts." "Ah," I said. The mother-in-law broke her silence. "We have always supported your family," she announced, choosing the word family as if it belonged to her. "You are being ungrateful in your old age, behaving like a child." My eyes went to the shoal on her shoulders, creamy and fine, the kind my wife would have admired with a smile and never bought. "Madam," I said, "you heard the nurse. We don't barter with breath here. Let's not barter with words either." The officer cleared his throat. "We can proceed with the deposit while you settle these matters," he offered, trying to give them a road that didn't end at a wall. "No," my daughter said immediately, then looked at her husband, at his mother, searching their faces for a different answer. The husband swallowed. "We can," he began, and stopped again. The mother shook her head, a small, decisive movement. "We will not," she said. My daughter's mouth hardened. She turned to me. "Fix it." I reached for my bag on the chair, the brown one that had sat there all day like unimportant luggage. The nurse moved it closer, quiet as a thought. My hand slid into the side pocket and came out with a worn leather wallet. It had a habit of squeaking when you opened it, a little complaint I knew like the sound of my own cough. I thumbed past the small photograph with fuzzy edges, the Ferris wheel, the child on my shoulders, to the cards. I took out one and held it up. "This is my insurance," I said. "It pays directly to the hospital for my care. The claim is filed by me, not by a proxy. It covers oxygen, monitoring, everything the doctor orders." I let that sit in the room until it found its chair. Then I added, "I did not give you this number because you did not ask how I plan to breathe." My daughter reached for the card the way a child used to reach for a cookie. Automatic, entitled, half ashamed. I lowered my hand an inch. "No," I said. "I will give this to the officer." The husband coughed, too loud. "Then why is her name on the bill?" he demanded. "Because she signed it months ago," the officer answered evenly. "She assigned herself as responsible party during a previous visit." He looked at me. "Sir, if you prefer, you can assume responsibility now. We can amend if you sign." I considered the paper in front of me. I thought of my wife's last good day, of the word she gave me like a coin to carry, kind. I thought of the voice that had told a nurse not to waste oxygen on me. I looked at my daughter. "No," I said softly, clearly. "It stays as it is." Her eyes widened, losing the hard shine for something rawer. "You're punishing me," she said. "You want to hurt me." I let my tongue rest against my teeth and chose the next words with care. "I want you to meet your own signature," I said. "I want you to see what you volunteered for when you were in a hurry. I am not changing your name. You put it there." The mother-in-law made a noise like a crow. "This is cruelty," she told the nurse. The nurse looked at her and then at me. "This is policy," she said, "and his choice." I handed the insurance card to the officer. "File the claim," I said. "It will pay what it pays. Send the rest to the responsible party of record." The officer took the card with the practiced neutrality of a man carrying two truths at once. Care has a cost, respect has another. "Yes, sir," he said, and disappeared, his shoes quiet, his relief at leaving palpable. The husband opened the leather folder with jerky confidence. "We have the house title," he said, laying a photocopy down as if it were a royal decree. "Her name is on it with yours. We can access the property." I pulled my glasses from the same side pocket, hooked them on, and looked at the paper. "No," I said, "that is not the current title." He blinked. "It's last year's." He pushed another paper forward. "And the joint account?" He stopped. The numbers in the corner refused to line up with his certainty. "It's empty," he said, softer to himself. "We saw that," my daughter whispered, as if saying it quietly would change the math. She looked up. "Where is it?" Her voice had none of the earlier blade. It carried a question I could have answered differently in another life. "In other accounts," I said. "In other names." My gaze went to the window, to the clean blue beyond the smudged glass. "In the trust." The word hung there like a small ship visible to anyone willing to look toward the water. The husband frowned. "What trust?" My slow smile returned, this time with a little more shape. "The trust in your hands?" I asked, and then shook my head. "Number A, legal one, established 2 years ago, in your wife's mother's name." The mother-in-law took a step forward, affronted. "My name?" she sputtered. "Your wife's mother," I repeated, and the room remembered the woman who smelled of jasmine and old books. "My late wife. It carries her name, her instructions, her values." My daughter's mouth moved around a word that would not come. You set up a trust," she said. "Without me?" I nodded. "With a trustee who is not you, with conditions, with time, with consequences that are written down in a calm office where the air smelled of toner and coffee." I could see it now, the lawyer's neat desk, the line where my signature went, the way my hand had not trembled. It pays for education, it pays for care, it pays for the house you think of as yours, maintenance, taxes, if the occupant meets the terms. I turned back to her. "Kindness," I said. "That's one of the terms." She laughed then, only once, a low, ugly thing that had no humor in it. "You can't test kindness," she said. "You can't measure it." "You're right," I said, "but you can record behavior. You can write down what a person says in a hospital room. You can ask a nurse what she heard. You can read a letter a father writes and leaves in a locked study with a brass latch changed to a new key." I paused, watched the words find their marks. "You can open an envelope when a doctor confirms a certain event. And you can learn whether the house remains open to the person it once sheltered, or whether it becomes a place that needs to be rented to pay for scholarships in your mother's name. You can do all that without raising your voice." She swallowed. "You wrote a letter." I nodded. "A few?" I pictured the envelope, her name written in my strict hand, the edges straight, the seal firm. I saw the copies lodged with the trustee, the copies with the lawyer, the copy in the safe that now stood empty of anything she would find useful except the truth. I wrote because I knew one day a moment like this would ask for something that is not a scream. Her husband put a hand on her arm. "We can contest," he muttered, already looking for a gate. "We can claim undue influence." His mother made an approving hum. "He's unwell. It will look bad." I took off my glasses and cleaned them with the cloth the nurse kept folded under the tray, buying the extra second that separates a reply from a reaction. "You can try," I said. "And the trust will hold. It was signed when I was in the pink of health. Reviewed twice. The witness is your wife's primary school teacher. She cried when she signed. She brought me a box of guavas from her garden. She told me your wife used to tuck her braid under her collar to look serious during dictation. She told me to remember the girl my wife had been. I took her advice." I slid the glasses back up my nose. "You may find the law still prefers signatures to tantrums." My daughter stared at me, as if seeing a man who had lived inside the walls of our house that whole time, a double of me taking careful steps she never thought to look for. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "I considered the honest answers, because you had become someone who would turn a plan into a weapon, because I wanted to watch you choose kindness without a camera on you, and chose the simplest. Because I wanted you to surprise me," I said, "in one direction or the other." The nurse shifted, a small sound of fabric. The machine ticked, patient as rain. The officer returned with a small printer's whir still in his hands. "The insurance is accepted," he said. "The deposit will be reduced accordingly. The balance remains under the responsible party on file. He handed a copy to my daughter, another to me. A number at the bottom looked smaller than before, but not small. My daughter's fingers trembled around the page, the rings on her hands suddenly ridiculous, as if they were holding themselves up by effort alone. "I'll pay later," she said. "We don't do later," the officer answered, not unkindly. "We do today or by arrangement. The arrangement requires a signature." He placed a pen on the tray, then looked at me. "Anything else, sir?" I shook my head. "Thank you," I said. He left again, leaving the pen behind like a test no one wanted to take. I turned to my daughter and lifted my hand in a small, slow gesture that once meant, "Come here," when she was small and sleepy and the couch had space for two. She didn't move. "You said," she began and stopped because there was no sentence that could hold everything she wanted to blame and everything she wanted to ask at once. Her husband shifted his weight. "We should go," he said. "We need to talk to people." His mother adjusted her shawl. "Yes," she agreed. "This place is not helpful." She threw the last word in the nurse's direction, like a coin she did not intend to pay with. My daughter looked at me as if the word father had become a place on a map she was not sure she could find anymore. "You would let me drown," she said. "No," I said. "I am letting you swim." I placed my palm flat on the sheet, the way I used to put it on her back when she was learning to float in a shallow pool. "The floor is near," I said. "Your feet will find it if you stop thrashing." Her eyes flashed. "You're enjoying your metaphors," she spat. "You always do when you think you're right." I let the retort go past me, like a fly meant for someone else. "Go to the study," I said quietly. "Ask the trustee to open it with the new key. Read the letter with your name. Read the one with your mother's name on top. Then decide what you will sign here." "What did you write?" she asked, and the child in her voice pulled at a place in me that still remembered her mango-sticky hands. "Enough," I said. "Enough to make today make sense." I turned my face to the window again and gave her my profile, the way my wife used to tease me for doing when I needed to cry with a little dignity. "Come back when you've read," I added. "We'll see what the world looks like from there." She stood for a second longer, suspended between two versions of herself, then snatched the folder from the tray and left, her husband and his mother flowing after her like parts of a river that didn't know which bank was the right one. The nurse exhaled, a sound like a small door closing in a calm house. She adjusted my line, checked my vitals, wrote a neat note. "That was," she began, and didn't finish because her training had taught her there are words that make things worse no matter how kindly they are said. "That was," I agreed. She looked at the window. "Evening soon," she said. I followed her gaze. The light had softened to that hour when the city looks washed and the edges of things seem a little kinder. "Evening soon," I repeated. "Do you want anything?" she asked. "Tea?" I nodded. "If it's no trouble." She smiled. "It's never trouble," she said, and went. When she returned with the steaming paper cup, I took it in both hands, steady, thankful. The jasmine smell rose from the hot water, a trick of the air, or my memory, I couldn't be sure. I sipped and let the warmth move down, untying knots that had lived in me for years. On the tray the pen lay where the officer had left it, tidy, patient. I looked at it, then at the oxygen line, then at the sky. Somewhere down the hall, a television murmured the news in a voice that didn't yet know my daughter had screamed, because her name sat where she didn't want to see it. I put the tea down and placed my palm flat on the sheet again. The machine kept time. The city breathed. The letters waited in a room with a changed lock for a woman I loved in two tenses. The girl she had been, the daughter she still was, somewhere under the rings and the words. I breathed and did the simplest thing you can do in a fight that wants to become a war. I stayed. Night rolled in like a soft tide, turning the room a shade deeper than the afternoon. The nurse lowered the lights one notch and closed the door halfway, the way people do when they're trying to protect a quiet moment without locking it. I lay with my palms flat on the sheet, listening to the thin music of the machine and the faraway rattle of a trolley somewhere down the hall. The bill lay in the folder. The pen waited. I waited too, and I let the waiting do its work. I thought of the letters in the study with the new lock, and of the old photograph in my wallet with our Ferris wheel faces frozen in that bright second. I thought of my wife's handwriting, neat, dark, always a little slanted, as if the words leaned forward to pull you along. When she died, I kept a single grocery list in her hand in the top drawer of my desk for a year. I read, "Milk, rice, coriander, call the plumber," like a poem. Ordinary words can save a man in a storm. Tonight the storm had my daughter's voice inside it, and those letters were the lighthouse on the coast. Footsteps, not hurried, not slow. The door opened, and my daughter came in alone. No husband, no shawled mother-in-law. Her hair was not as neat as before. A curl had escaped, and she did not push it back. She closed the door with more care than she had opened it and stood at the end of the bed for a breath, as if deciding which version of herself would speak. She took 2 steps forward. "I read them," she said. The voice was smaller, not weak, just closer to the ground, like a person who has finally sat down after running too far. She put the leather folder on the tray table and did not open it. She looked at my hands, at the oxygen line, at the window, anywhere but my eyes. "The key worked," she said, and a humorless half-smile touched her mouth. "The trustee was waiting. He had tea ready. He knew my name." She drew in a breath that shook just enough to tell the truth. "He knew my mother's name too." I did not move. I let the stillness welcome her like a chair pulled out from a table. "What did you find?" I asked, even though I could have recited every line. She swallowed. "2 envelopes," she said. Mine was heavier. Another small, dry smile. "You always said my homework weighed more than it should." She glanced at my face to see if I remembered. I did. "1 letter was from you," she continued. "You had copied Mother's note at the end, the one she wrote when she was sick, the one I never saw." She lowered her eyes to the sheet. She wrote, "Be kind to your father. He won't always ask. He will always need it." The words hung in the air with their own light. I closed my eyes for a second and opened them again. "And the rest?" I asked. She nodded, business returning in her neck and shoulders like a habit. "You wrote about the trust. You wrote about the house. You wrote about the rules that are not numbers. Kindness, respect, care for staff. No shouting in rooms where people are trying to live." Her mouth twisted. "You wrote that a nurse's word would carry weight." She looked up then, finally her eyes red but dry. "You wrote about me telling someone not to waste oxygen on you. You wrote it in the future, like you could see this day." She laughed once, short and soft. "And I gave it to you." We were both quiet long enough to hear a cartwheel squeak and a distant kettle click off somewhere. "I am ashamed," she said. Not loud, not for effect. A sentence placed on the table between us. "I am ashamed of what I said. I am ashamed of the way I talked to the nurse. I am ashamed that I stood in a room where you were fighting for breath and I fought for a discount." She took another breath, this one steady. "I can tell you I was stressed. I can tell you I've been afraid. I can tell you I learned to count money like soldiers because I thought that was how wars were won. But none of that turns the sentence back into a better one." She lifted her head, finally meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry." The apology did not fix anything by itself, but it opened a door. Doors are all a man like me can ask for at the end of a long day. I glanced at the corner where the nurse's pen had left a dot on her notepad. "You owe someone else words before me," I said. "She is the one you tried to push aside." My daughter nodded quickly like a student who finally has the right answer. "I spoke to her," she said, "down the hall. I told her I was wrong. I told her to never reduce care for you and to never listen to me if I sound like that again about anyone. I told her I will file the compliment form with her name." A small, real smile showed and vanished. She said I didn't have to do the form. I said I did. I let air run in and out of me in an even rope. The machine clicked its agreement. "Good," I said. The simple word did what it needed to do. She pulled the leather folder open at last and took out the bill copy and the arrangement form the officer had left. "I will sign the arrangement," she said. "I will pay the balance today." She took the pen and held it above the line, then paused. "Not because you want me to suffer," she added, looking at me, "but because I put my name there. I did it without thinking. Today, I will think." She signed. The pen made a crisp sound against the paper. She slid the sheet back into the folder and looked smaller, lighter. People think paying makes you poorer. Sometimes it makes you richer in a way banks can't read. She tensed again a second later, glancing at me for judgment, for approval, for a sentence that would let her lay down a different weight she had carried all day. I did not make her beg for it. "Thank you," I said. That is what adults do when they see their name. Relief moved across her face like shade across a field. She sat, finally, at the side of the bed. Her shoulder almost brushed the rail. A small curl rested on her cheek, trembling with each breath she took. I was angry, she said, more to the room than to me. And I thought anger was the same as strength. She shook her head. I hear your flat voice when I'm angry now. Not today, it says. Not like this. Her hand found the edge of the sheet and folded and unfolded the seam as if it were a page in a book she wanted to read slowly. The trust is strict, she said. I won't pretend I like it. She lifted her eyes. But it is fair. It is a fence, I said. It keeps the garden from wandering into the road. She laughed, a soft, old sound I hadn't heard since she was a teenager who had just discovered sarcasm. You and your gardens, she said. You and your fences. She looked at the oxygen line. You and your machines that keep time when people forget how to breathe right. The humor fell away. I don't want to be someone who forgets to breathe right around you again. The door opened a hand's width. The nurse peered in, saw us quiet, and stepped inside. My daughter stood so quickly her chair squeaked. I'm sorry, she said to the nurse, her voice clear. For my words earlier, I was wrong. I've signed the arrangement. Please give him everything the doctor orders. The nurse's face did the small, good thing, softening without melting. Thank you, she said. He'll get the care he needs. My daughter nodded. If I sound like that again, she added, forcing herself to say it, please ignore me and call a doctor, and then you can remind me I told you to ignore me. The nurse let herself smile for real. I'll remember, she said. She turned to me. Pain? It's under control, I said. Thank you for staying steady. She tapped my chart. Steady is the job, she said, and left us with a hush that felt clean. The air changed after that. Not like rain, like a window opened. My daughter pulled her chair a little closer. Tell me the rest, she said. Not the money, the other part. The part in the letter where you wrote about Mother. I took a breath and let my eyes climb the ceiling crack river again, then returned to her face. She asked me to keep you kind, I said. She asked me to make a structure where kindness did not need to be requested every day. A system is better than begging. I let the sentence sit. So I wrote down what kindness looks like when it is tired. It looks like showing up. It looks like paying what you promised. It looks like not raising your voice at strangers who are doing their job. It looks like calling your father before you call a cashier. Her lashes fluttered. I can do that, she said. I will do that. The promise did not sound like a ribbon. It sounded like a brick set carefully in a wall. She took a breath. I would like to bring you home when the doctor says you can, she added. Keep the room ready. Keep the jasmine soap you like. She looked at me, worried. If the trust allows it. I smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached the tired corners of my eyes. The trust allows kindness, I said. It always has strong doors for that. We sat without talking for a while. I watched her hands. They were the same hands that had tugged at my pocket when we crossed the road, now with rings and a darker polish. But the shape had not changed. She watched my breathing the way she watched it when she was 5 and thought she could blow on my chest to help me cough. When she finally spoke again, the sentence found me ready. I am afraid, she said. Only now I can say it. She half laughed. I have been afraid for a long time, and I poured that fear into numbers because numbers don't shout. She moved her fingers on the sheet. But they can become knives if you hold them wrong. You can put them down, I said. You can hold other things. I looked at the pen. You held the right thing just now. She nodded. Tomorrow, she said, I will call the billing desk before they call me. I will tell them my plan and keep it. She raised her chin. I am good with plans when I decide to be decent. The sentence made both of us smile. And I will call the trustee, she added, not to fight, but to ask what I should know. I will learn the rules of a system that is bigger than my mood. She looked at the window. Mother would like that. She would, I said. She would also ask what we're having for dinner. The old joke slid into the room like a familiar song. My daughter let out a breath she had been carrying all day. I'll bring soup. Tomorrow, she said. The kind you pretend not to like and finish anyway. I lifted an eyebrow. I don't pretend, I murmured. You cook like a person who thinks salt is a rumor. She made a face. The 5-year-old flickered in it, quick and bright. "Fine," she said. "I'll ask the nurse for help." We both turned our heads toward the door at the same time and laughed, quiet and clean. The billing officer returned with his careful tread and his tablet that never learned to smile. "Arrangement signed," he said, addressing my daughter, his tone now warmer because he could see a bridge where a wall had stood. "Thank you. We'll proceed with the claim and the schedule you proposed." He turned to me. "Doctor will downgrade oxygen tonight if the next checks hold. Morning review at 8. He paused. "You have good people around you." My daughter and I both looked at the nurse's desk, at the empty doorway, at the place where my wife was not, and answered together without words. After he left, we sat in a quiet that felt like the part of a song where the instruments breathe. My daughter reached for my hand and stopped an inch away. "May I?" she asked. I moved my fingers into hers. Her palm was warm and cold at once, like a stone that sat half in sun, half in shade. We did not speak for a long time. The machine kept a soft beat. The city lights began to prick the window in small points, and the sky turned the color of old steel. Somewhere, a baby cried itself to sleep, and a television learned how to whisper. I counted my breaths and found that I did not need to count them as carefully anymore. The air seemed thicker with something good. She stood at last. "I will come back early," she said, "with soup and with the apology form printed and signed, even if she says I don't need it." She smoothed the sheet at my hip, not as a task, but as a gesture. "Do you want anything else?" I thought of the list in my wife's hand from long ago, and of what cannot be bought in a shop. "Yes," I said. "Bring me the yellow blanket from the old trunk." She blinked. "Mine?" "Yours," I said. "It smells like time when it has been kind." She smiled like a person who has just found a toy under the bed she thought had been lost. "I will," she said. She reached the door, then turned back. "One more thing," she said, almost shy. "Am I still the person you thought I could be?" The question was a small bird with a beating heart in the space between us. I held it the way I held her when she fell off the bike the first time and asked if we should sell the bicycle. "Yes," I said, "when you choose to be." Her shoulders lowered. "Then I will keep choosing," she said. She opened the door, then paused again and looked toward the nurse's station. "Thank you," she called, loud enough to carry. The nurse's voice floated back, warm. "Sleep well," she said, and we all treated, the words like a blanket. After she left, the room grew thinner and softer. I lay back and watched the ceiling river run straight toward the wall, sure of its end. The oxygen hiss turned down one notch. The machine kept time without scolding me. I looked at the folder and at the pen and at the place on the tray where my daughter's signature shone a little under the light. A bill is numbers and ink, but tonight it had been more. It had been a mirror. My name wasn't there. Her name was? She screamed. Then she read. Then she signed. Then she apologized. Then she held my hand. That is the shape of a day I will not forget. I closed my eyes and saw my wife again on that last good day. Her braid over her shoulder, her face thinner, but her eyes as sure as ever. "Keep our girl kind," she had said. I had kept a fence and a letter and a lock to help with the keeping, but tonight my daughter kept herself. That is better than any paper. In the dark behind my eyes, I whispered, a thank you I did not need anyone to hear. I let it belong to the woman who taught me to boil tea when the world was loud, to the nurse who taught me that steady is a kind of love, to the officer who taught me that policy can carry a quiet mercy, and to the child who came back into the room, not as a queen with a pen, but as a daughter with a hand. If you felt this story, tell me where you're watching from, and what line grabbed your chest. Like, share, comment with your own take, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.